We're so excited to have everybody here again. The special guest speaker virtual series is part of From Farms to Incubators menteeship program, a collaboration between us and the academics and researchers at the University of California's Merced School of Engineering and also computer science. I'm really excited to have this with us today. Today's speaker is going to be Connie Bowen. Connie is the founding general partner at Farmhand Ventures, an impact venture firm focused on building and backing startups that shape the future of work in agriculture. She has a lot of experience in the agri-food tech industry, has been previously worked at the Yield Lab. I'm going to let some more folks in, and a boutique farmland investment fund in Oregon. We want to hear more about that too. Connie's approach is deeply rooted in her empathy for farm workers and her commitment to investing with purpose. I want to note a few housekeeping things this evening, and I'm saying this evening because we're all on different coasts, but tonight, I'm on the East Coast. A few housekeeping things. Today's talk will be in the format of a fireside chat, roughly about 20 minutes, followed by a Q&A. It is being recorded, so will be available as part of the menteeship program. We love questions. I love questions. Please have your questions at the ready, but in general, prefer you save them for after the fireside chat if possible. Really excited to start here. And the thing is, I always say fireside chat, but we don't really have a fire behind me. But the way that I like to think of these convenings is that we're all sitting together. We can imagine that we're around a fireplace and that we all have coffee and tea in front of us, and we're all in an intimate space and having a discussion, right? So we're honored to have Connie with us today. So, Connie, where are you joining us from today?
Today I'm joining from New Jersey at my parents' house. Because but I'm based in St. Louis most of the time, though technically Farmhand Ventures, some of Farmhand Ventures entities are headquartered in Merced actually. So I spend a bunch of time there.
Well, you're reading my mind. I really am excited to have you share a little bit more about Farmhand Ventures and really what inspired you to found it. If you can give us a little bit of the sequential journey or history.
Sure. So yeah, I'll give a little back context and then we'll land in present day, I guess. So I studied engineering in undergrad, and that's the only degree I have is undergrad. I went to a small liberal arts college outside of Philly called Swarthmore. I have a BS in general engineering, which we joke is kind of BS. Like you have to get a master's to like actually do anything with a general engineering degree if you actually want to be an engineer. But I was really fortunate to stumble into an entrepreneurship fellowship program called Venture for America right after school. And so that's how I came to run into the Yield Lab in St. Louis, Missouri. So Venture for America is focused on basically economic development via entrepreneurship in cities like St. Louis, Detroit, Baltimore, not New York, Boston, San Francisco. Um, and so that's how I ended up working at the Yield Lab, which was one of, if not the first agri-food tech specific ag tech accelerator. So we at that time were a a 3 million, sub $3 million venture fund, which also like please, I know like would save questions, but if I use any like financial jargon or like stuff like that, don't you're not stupid for not knowing it. It's like kind of stupid and exclusionary. So like do not hesitate to be like, what is that? And drop it in the chat and I'll answer in real time.
Yeah, that's a really
Um,
good point. If there's anything technical or any questions, please jump in.
yeah, and like it's all like totally made up and it's just like translation stuff, so don't hesitate. Um, but yeah, so I didn't know what I don't think I knew what the word entrepreneurship meant actually when I was like in undergrad, really. It definitely wasn't a thing that I thought I would end up doing. I worked in restaurants a lot too. I almost did that instead of college. So like I've always really liked food and back of house kind of side of things. But I was always stressed about sustainability too, and pretty good at math and technically inclined, and I like building stuff too. So I think kind of that intersection led me into ag tech, and then I stumbled accidentally into this venture capital world. And I just got lucky and kind of also thrown in the deep end, drinking from a fire hose right out of school. And that really helped me get great exposure to what startup investing, startup building looks like. particularly in the sector of kind of impact agri-food. And because we were such a small team and we were growing fast, we expanded pretty quickly into Ireland and Argentina and then
Mm.
Singapore. Um, which for me meant a lot of random time zone calls, not a lot of cool trips, because we were really bootstrapped. We didn't have a lot of money. Um, uh, yeah, I just got kind of lucky, I think, in the timing that I got into ag tech and really fell in love with space and what I can do within it. So I did the yield lab for a number of years. I watched ag tech investment dollars increase. But I didn't really see on-farm adoption increasing at the same rate, and that
Mhm.
felt like a potential problem because generally you want the companies you invest in to successfully sell stuff. Um, so I decided that my family also has a farm in Iowa, so like my
Mm.
dad's family is all from the Midwest, and I had like a little bit of farming context, but not really. So I decided I need to spend more time in the like real asset or farm management side of things. So I joined a small farmland investment firm and moved to rural Oregon. And I kind of joked that I was like social distancing before it was cool. And I spent a lot of, gosh, I guess like 2018, 19 in Willamette Valley. And we were pretty diversified as a farmland investment fund. We had blueberries and hazelnut and hemp up there, and we were trying to create basically a vertically integrated business out of that, which we could double click back into if you want to. But basically trying to make sure that, most of the food dollar doesn't actually end up going to farms. As in like only 8 to 12% of your dollar in the grocery
Mhm.
store is going to a farmer. But if you can get further into like the packing, shipping, distributing side of things, then you can get more money off of your farm product, right? So we were trying to do that in Oregon. And but I was also like pretty actively engaged in farm management, technically managing the farm manager. Um, but for various reasons, that meant being the farm manager sometimes. And that really helped open my eyes to the fact that labor is kind of the whole thing, at the end of the day. It was the first year hemp was legal in the United States. So I was very involved in that and working alongside our crew. Most of our crew was from Oaxaca. I think I got really good firsthand exposure to the realities of the farm labor system and all of it. We were a woman-owned farm operation. We had both organic and conventional properties. We paid more technically than average wage in that county. But still at the end of the day, I had colleagues who relied upon collecting enough water bottles that they have a deposit, right? If you recycle water bottles in Oregon, enough water bottles to make like 200 or 300 bucks to buy their kids' shoes.
Mm.
And like that's unacceptable to me. And then we could get into other things too. But I have been fairly obsessed with this kind of ag labor issue ever since. And then on a purely capitalistic level, um, stuff doesn't work if it doesn't integrate well with the people who actually use it, period. And I think a lot of technologists don't get that, and a lot of folks don't have exposure to working on farms, right? So like that's natural. But there's also a really interesting opportunity, I believe, for technology to actually make the lives of the people who do the work better. And that's not um, the only outcome that can kind of come from automation investment. You can definitely see how there are different, I think it's like everyone's mind jumps right to like autonomy and robots and job loss and all that stuff, which is valid and sort of possible, but also pretty techno-economically infeasible. Like
Mm.
if you think about how much uniformity you need to like do true automation, right?
Mm.
And also how low margin farming is. Um, and I see there being a tremendous opportunity to actually invest in technologies that don't, like, I'm not, I think, too unrealistic about things. We're not going to make it's not, technology won't fix the system, right? Like, this is a super
Mhm.
integrated problem. Like, you have to get into policy and all that jazz. And, it's not going to get perfectly fixed. But technology can make work in agriculture less bad and more profitable for individual humans who do it, and can create a pathway for the next generation of ag tech entrepreneurs and founders to have equity and upside in the next generation of ag tech companies. And so that's kind of what we do at Farmhand, which is my firm now. we invest in companies that are doing that. So we've made three investments to date. We're pretty new.
Yeah.
I'm the sole kind of
Mhm.
managing partner at this fund and founder, but I have an
Oh,
awesome
okay.
team of kind of venture partners and operating partners. And we do quite a bit of work also with the University of California, Ag and Natural Resources. We have kind of a consulting arm as well. So like I wrote a paper on inclusive innovation in agtech. Actually, it's published with UC Merced.
Hmm.
Um, and with like the Citrus Institute and Labernaki. But yeah, I that's so yeah, at Farmhand we do kind of, I
Hmm.
guess, more than two things realistically, but two core things. Fund side, we make investments, and we do really early stage investment, like $250,000 checks, which is quite small actually in the world of venture capital.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say I invest in like stupid early companies. And then I also do a lot of kind of we build companies actually and do kind of tech transfer. So like we're
Mhm.
actually working with a guy out of Merced who's got an interesting almond dryer technology.
Hmm.
And like we're helping him to kind of further that along and
Hmm.
figure out what licensing agreements look like with the tech transfer, and also where does he want to take this? Does he want to sell it directly to an
Yeah.
existing company or standalone and all that jazz. So we do that through this program we call Divine Build. And then we also do a program that is very industry informed, wherein we have a group that is representative of all the different commodities, all the different regions, and then also of within the state of California, as well as farm worker representation and food safety
Yeah.
representation to basically prioritize needs of growers and industry within different places. And then we bring in companies with existing commercially ready solutions, so stuff that they can like actually sell, and we have them demo at various rec centers across the state. And sometimes non-rec
Did you
centers. We'll
say
actually be doing
did
one
you
in
say rec
Merced.
center? Did you say rec centers or
Yeah, so research extension,
research? Okay, research
yeah,
extension. Okay.
yeah. Is that it actually? Yeah, research extension centers.
Gotcha.
So that's basically like experiment stations for California.
Right.
It's and then also there's like another, I'm not going to get my acronyms right. Merced has a thing that is not technically a rec center, but like the thing that Danny Royer does, that's the farm of the future or whatever. And
Smart farm.
that counts as something. And we are going to do a demo day there, actually,
Oh,
focused on soil health in probably August, because
okay.
doesn't everyone love Merced in August?
Exciting because we have some folks from Merced here on the call as well. So it's good
Yeah.
to know. Um, well, it's a rich history that you have, and also I hear that there's in your own background and personal history that you have a farm. Your family has a farm in Iowa, is that right? And then you worked at a farm in Oregon. And that's where what I'm hearing is that that brought a lot of inspiration, if I could say, as to kind of like a catalyst as to what right? Brought
Yeah,
you,
I mean,
you
yes,
know,
definitely working
yes to
on,
know.
it's funny because like in ag is one of those like very rare industries where you have more street cred basically if you've like inherited land. Like I
Uh,
can like because my like if I'm like, oh, I'm a third or fourth generation farm, like my dad doesn't farm, like no one in my we are literally just absentee landowners. My grandparents live in the Twin Cities.
mhm.
Barry, whose dad, Richard, farm, who is like, where they're like, it's kind of like an uncle, the guy who farms our family's farm.
Oh,
So
okay.
like
Right,
we're
I hear.
close with him, we have a good relationship, but also we're not that close with him. Um, and it's just funny because like that, I mention it always, and it gives me street cred, yeah, in rooms of farmers. And that's one of the issues maybe with agriculture that I would
Mhm.
love to like start to solve for.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah. And I guess Amy, for me, like I would say more of my inspiration really is like more I like really love working in restaurants. Like I sometimes say like if the world were better, I would like I would just be
Yeah,
like
that
probably
actually
pastry
stood out.
chefing.
I didn't know that you worked at restaurants before. I mean, and so forth. And what I'm hearing now is that you said if you could wave your magic wand, maybe you would work at restaurants. So maybe you can connect that a little bit with the how that connects. Where is the connection there with, and why aren't you working at restaurants then?
Yeah, I mean, look, hey, it's good to have a plan B, right? But like the reality is you break your ankle and you work in a restaurant and you're out of a job. Um, and the other reality is it's low margin. And the other thing when I was younger that I was really factoring in that I've kind of evolved my thinking on because I do have tremendous respect for restaurant work. But at the time I was like, oh, I don't want to just serve rich people fancy dinners in a world
Hmm.
where like we need to solve for like climate change, maybe. And so that was like my original rationale. And
Mm.
again, like we have a family friend who I used to work for who really used to work for Chez Panisse and Alice Waters and like really helped bring kind of farm to table movement to
Hmm.
New York City. And so like that, when you look at trends in restaurants and then you look at trends in CPG, there's
Hmm.
a lag, but I kind of view restaurants as like the cutting edge art almost, and even high-end
Hmm.
cuisine that like obviously most people don't get to eat at these really high-end
Yeah.
places, but they do have an impact on what good food means for like everyone, actually.
Hmm.
So anyway, I do
Yeah.
think that's a really high impact pathway. I'm I don't know, I just have this combination of experiences that makes me pretty well suited for what I'm doing now.
One
And
part
yeah,
of
I'll be pretty content to be trying to solve for
yeah.
labor in the ag supply chains for the rest of my career, really.
Um, I mean, one thing that caught me what you shared was also you said that you invest in companies. Did you say young dumb companies, or there was a way that you put it
Stu-
that it was a lot.
Yeah, stupid early.
Like,
Yeah,
tell me like
yeah,
how you find these like what's your rubric in looking in deciding to pick up a company or invest in a company. I mean, can you share some of the success stories? I mean, you mentioned three for my memory
yeah.
enhancement,
Well,
right? Do you
yeah,
want to
and
share
my
some
fund is
stories?
relatively young, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm still fundraising. So I unfortunately don't have like independent wealth. I guess kind of my family has farmland, but that's pretty illiquid. But so I have to when I say I manage a fund and invest, that means most of my time is spent begging people with more money to invest in my fund such that I can invest it in
Mhm.
startup
Yeah.
companies. So fund management is like mostly fundraising, actually.
Okay.
Um, I mean, ideally you get to the point where it is a blend of fundraising and then
Yeah.
diligencing new investments and deploying it. But the early part of it is fundraising and getting be told no. That's mostly it. And then rarely you get told yes, and you have to move really quickly to make sure all the papers get signed on time and the money moves before someone changes their mind.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so when I say stupid early, I guess I mean like I tend to be investing in companies that have less than five people, probably more like two people.
Okay.
So like founders. And I
Why did
tend to
you
be the
choose to,
person.
why do you choose to focus on those really young, like the young companies like that?
Um, Partially it's a factor of like how much what my fund size is.
Okay.
So I realistically, like I'm a solo emerging fund manager. I'm 31. So like I'm young also. I'm a woman. And so realistically, like you're not gonna get more than 10 million under management in fund one,
Mhm.
based on those variables. So I thought very intentionally about kind of and kind of your fund size dictates your fund strategy is like a
Okay.
thing that people say all the time in VC. Um, so part of it is that. And then part of it is like I am good. I like being in that phase of things. I like rolling up my sleeves. Like I've finished building robots for people, literally,
Hmm.
like table sawed plastic components pretty badly, actually. Like I do whatever needs to be done for companies, kind of, and I tend to be pretty hands-on. So I take an approach wherein I want to have a relatively small set portfolio of companies. And I also want to be able to get in and buy. So basically, the way venture capital investment works is you're buying equity in companies. And so when you're buying equity in really early stage companies, that equity is cheap and I
Mm-hmm.
can get more of it for my check. Um, and so that's one of the main factors. And then one of the other big factors, especially in ag,
Hmm.
is most, in venture capital, like especially like Silicon Valley venture capital, you hear about like unicorns and billion-dollar exits and all that jazz. But if
Yeah.
you look at agriculture, we haven't really had any unicorn exits. We had like one company called Climate Corp get bought by Monsanto in 2013 for
Hmm.
just shy of billion dollars, and we're still talking about it. Uh, which means that like you have to design a fund portfolio to this actually one of my friends from school was like, "You're doing financial engineering. You should tell people you're doing financial engineering." And I think he works for like Bridgewater right now. So like I was like, "Oh, that's legit. He knows." But anyway, like it's also known as math, I think. But basically, I'm trying to design a fund portfolio that delivers the right multiples on a fund level, which in venture capital, oftentimes people talk about like power law, which is this idea that like you're going to bet on a bunch of things, and
Mhm.
one of your bets is going to deliver your entire fund and then some and make you rich, right? Um, I'm betting that I actually am more interested in financing solutions for agriculture, so I have a slightly different approach. I'm a bit more impact oriented.
Uh,
And again, when you look at agriculture and the exits, most exits in ag come from mergers and acquisitions or M&A.
mhm.
And the like average exit size that we really have good data for in the past couple of years is like 122-ish, 130 million range. So
Mm.
like those are pretty small exits. So I focus a lot on companies that I can get in early and get enough ownership that are not going to need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars because those companies are
Okay.
going to not deliver the right return for me and that are going to be able to leverage a lot of non-dilutive, so like grant funding, although TBD if we still have grant funding, that's kind of a problem right now. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, so for all those reasons, and then it's ultimately a really personal thing. And the way I find people is I'm on a lot of podcasts, I talk to a lot of people, I write a lot, I have a
You have
newsletter.
a
Uh,
podcast, right? Or is
I
it,
don't have
I
a
get your
podcast.
newsletter a lot. So this is interesting when I was going to ask you, how do you actually go out and fish? So what I'm hearing is you use the media a lot, or you
Yeah,
write.
I use media, I use conferences. I was Sorry, my dog is being bad. I was good and early kind of in the space such that like, and I used to write a newsletter for the Yield Lab, which has kind of got people knowing my name. And I've just like, there's not that many women in ag tech and I've been yeah, Amy, you and I have collaborated on some efforts there that have been beneficial to kind of highlighting
Yeah,
my name again. But like, I'm kind of a known entity in the space, which means that like, if you talk to three people in ag tech and say you're doing something related to labor and ag,
yeah,
I would guess that one of them is at least one of them will probably introduce you to me.
yeah. That's true. You're actually right about that one.
Yeah.
So that's certainly a positive in that area. And then I was also going to say that I wanted to flip back about the three companies, I want to call them
Yeah.
mini companies, baby companies that we're
Startups.
talking about.
Yeah.
Realize that you may not be able to mention their names, but can
No, no, I can.
you share a little
Yeah.
bit about their technology, the innovation, and how it all works? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, there's three of them. I'll go in order of investment. So one is a company called L5 Automation. It's based in La Cañada outside of LA. They do it, this is like the most engineering-y cool one. They do two-armed strawberry harvesting. So it's a two-armed robotic system. They've got an interesting patent on what Alex calls hand-eye coordination, which, as you guys know, is like a super non-trivial problem to be solving for. Um, you've had a lot of companies try to solve the strawberry harvesting problem because it's extremely expensive for farms. There are so many strawberry harvests per year relative to other crops, and people can really only harvest strawberries until they're like 35 or 40 before their back is so messed up that they can't do it anymore. So like this is work that we should, I would argue, displace people from. And it one of the things that's really cool about L5, I invested right after Good Farms, which is one of the biggest farm strawberry producers in California, and also a group that helped form the Equitable Food Initiative certification,
Mhm.
along with Costco. Buy your produce at Costco. But Good Farms is unusual as an operation in that they are pretty egalitarian. They actually, you'll find on a lot of farms and that like frankly, a lot of farm operations are pretty racist.
Mhm.
And you'll hear like dialogue around workers that's just like it's the Mexicans, da 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 da.
Mhm.
And that's not at all how it is on good farms. Like everyone is a colleague. Doesn't matter if you are it doesn't matter what your literacy level is. It doesn't matter. Like it's a respectful workplace, which is unfortunately, in my experience at least, kind of an anomaly. On farms, it's more normal on big farms, interestingly,
Interesting.
which is I think something that sometimes is counter to the like
Yeah.
narrative. Um, but so L5 has collaborated really closely with Good Farms and it has enabled Alex to design a system. And Alex's previous company,
Hmm.
the founder's name is Alex Gutierrez, and he is a solo founder. It's interesting. We're looking for potentially a co-founder for him on the business side. But he co-founded Astrobotics,
Oh,
which is a
okay.
company that like won a moonshot. They
Uh-huh.
are hopefully their next mission will be successful in sending something to the moon. So like he's a
Oh.
smart dude. Um, and what he's done is designed the system in parallel with the actual workers, such that we can start to move people who were harvesting strawberries into quality control, which is like a better job and it's a higher value job. And it starts to enable again more of that margin to come on farm. So I think that's like a super cool company.
Hmm.
Then I'll be quicker on the other two. One of the other ones, this one's a little bit later stage than I would normally invest in. It's called New West Genetics. It's a
Hmm.
hemp seed genetics company. And
Hmm.
so L5 is a really good example of directly addressing labor as an issue, right? New West indirectly, well, directly addresses labor as a bottleneck. So by that I mean, so New West Genetics is the leading hemp genetics company. I actually initially invested in them with my previous firm, the Yield Lab, in like 2017. Hemp
Hmm.
was legalized in the United States in 2018, by the way. So that
Hmm.
was either a really good investment or a really stupid investment. And so far it's looking good. Um, but they don't do like the fun stuff in hemp and cannabis. They're breeding industrial hemp, so it's low THC. But what's really interesting about and like if they really materially they doubled protein and oil yield in hemp, which is obviously meaningful. But then as relates to farmhand's thesis, they bred hemp to be what I call combinable. So when you harvest like soy and core beans and like all the Midwest row crops, you use a thing called a combine and it kind of integrates all the different cultivation tasks
Yeah.
in it. And so everyone like Barry, who farms my family's land in Iowa, has a combine. And I have invested in a number of novel crop companies with previous firms over the years. So, like, we were at the Yield Lab investors in a company called Covercress,
Mhm.
which had a great exit. It got bought by Bayer um, less than 2 years ago for almost $400 million. And in a
Hmm.
JV, in a joint venture with Chevron and Bunge.
Okay.
And so Bunge is like a kind of a supply chain player. Chevron is obviously an oil company. And then Bayer is like an input, so seed and chem inputs
Hmm.
company because they own Monsanto now. Um, and what was really interesting about like that is that was a play for sustainable aviation fuel. So we've got
Hmm.
pressure to reduce emissions in aviation. So there's this move towards basically a new version of biofuel that is sustainable
Yeah.
aviation fuel. Um, and without getting in the weeds of like details on that, hemp is a really great input feedstock, way lower carbon intensity than sugarcane from Brazil, than uh, soybeans, certainly, than corn,
Hmm.
and even than cannellina. And so it's a really interesting crop. And one of the challenges that some of these novel crops, covercress included, have faced is scaling up. It's really hard to get mass acreage adoption. But hemp actually you can like easily rotate in with corn and soy. And so
Interesting.
we're feeling really optimistic about like actually introducing a new row crop at
Huh.
like a corn soy scale acreage,
Wow.
which
That's
would be really meaningful environmentally
hmm.
because there's a reason they call it weed. Like hemp grows really easily. It's super low water input, it's super low fertilizer input.
Huh.
And it has a really deep root, which has really good benefits for soil health and carbon sequestration.
Hmm.
So like, and we're seeing at least yield bumps
Hmm.
with in the corn and beans, which like other crops, sometimes when you rotate in, you get a
Yeah.
yield drag or a decrease. So that's exciting.
That's really cool.
Um,
That could be a row crop, right? We're looking at potential row crop. Or did you say
yeah.
cover crop as well? Or
I guess you could use hemp as a cover crop, but that's not its primary
uh,
intent, and
yeah.
you wanna grow it out. Yeah, and then the last investment is, because it's 2025, we have to have an AI play in our portfolio. That is all about AI. But this is actually a UC Davis spin out.
In
It's
my
a company
mind,
called
right? Uh-huh.
it's a company called Scout. It basically it can process really low quality images in from like anything, iPhone, camera, telemetric data from your fancy tractor,
Mhm.
which is increasingly going to be prevalent, into per vine insights. So they focus specifically on wine, and they're an early stage company that we helped actually the PI at UC Davis, Mason Earls. So it kind of was born out of APHIS. We helped him to find kind of his co-founder and to pay for kind of tech transfer agreements.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were involved really early with that one, which was fun.
I was going to have you talk a little bit briefly just about the UC Merced connection again. Can you briefly, Connie, share how you got involved with the UC Merced project, or what is that about again?
Yeah, I would say a couple different ways. So, I have an entrepreneur who's based actually in New Jersey. Actually, yeah, she's in New Jersey. Um, she and I got connected I don't know, 3 years ago or something, because she was working on an ag robotics company.
Hmm.
And someone told her to talk to me, and she happened to live close to my parents' house, and I happened to be at my parents' house for some reason. And so we got a beer, and I was really interested in what she was working on. It was kind of around crop transportation for specialty crops. So, like farm workers,
Hmm.
it's really hard to like pick table grapes. That's a hard thing to think about automating. But it's like not really hard to move a wheelbarrow up and down a row. So like why are we wasting people's time pushing wheelbarrows? Like we could automate that. So that is kind of the thesis of her company. It's changed names. Now it's called Gather. It's based in Merced.
Okay.
And so she was working with a guy named Dominic Milano, who's got a shop in Merced called Milano Technical Group.
Oh,
And we just ended up doing a lot of work together on that project. And now Dominic is a venture partner in my fund. So part-time kind of advisor on my fund. And yeah, we do work together on various kind of ag advising projects as well.
I'm gonna
And
open.
that's how I got connected, I think, probably with like Josh
Yeah.
Veers and me and all
With
that
the folks at
group.
Merced. I mean, this is in pretty incredible. And thanks for sharing a little bit more about sort of the story that kind of led you to where you are today. I want to open it up to the other folks on the call today and for questions. I mean, I'm sure I have at least another dozen questions, but I'd really like to open up the conversation a little bit from folks here. So can you unmute yourself, join in, introduce yourself. Where are you? Who are you? Where are you from? And then just jump right in.
Hi, Connie. My name is Laurel. I'm the marketing communication specialist working with From Farms to Incubators. And I guess my question for you is it sounds like there's a lot of problems that you want to solve. And I recently spoke in a college classroom with a professor who has a background in engineering, music, and like venture as well. And she brought up the point, which made me just think more about what you're mentioning, how entrepreneurs are backed by venture are most likely going to be the people to solve all the problems in our world right now, or more specifically with the food system. I was wondering if you see it like, are you guys the sole players in that, or are there other people, like for the food system wise at least?
Yeah, I'm gonna like directly disagree with that.
Okay.
So,
I thought it was interesting.
well, okay, entrepreneurs, sure, maybe. Well, I don't know. My definition of entrepreneurs and my definition of technology is much broader than that of your average venture capitalist, I would say. I actually even often describe myself more as a impact investor than a venture capitalist
Right.
because, like, while I do equity investments, I also am always working on getting grant funding. I'm working with CDFA, California Department of Food and Ag, to figure out some kind of various non-dilutive programs that will move things along. So I I think that it is important to, and also what's funny is like if you go into the history of venture capital historically, like
Mhm.
we didn't used to expect returns at the multiples that we do to that like web kind of version of VC has brought about. And so there are there's a need for risk capital. And I think that risk capital backed entrepreneurs, again broadly defined, are super essential. And I guess I like the other thing. Echo. my, my dog says hello. Echo, stop. Sorry. Other thing that I think is true is
That's
bye.
right. I can hear him if he wants to join us. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny because my parents have a dog too, and the combo is chaos. Um, uh, but um, but yeah, I think the other thing that's true about entrepreneurs and venture-backed founders is most of them fail. And most of
Oh,
them are wrong about what they think the future is going to look like. And I am super aware of that, and I don't think that I'm exempt from that probability. Um, I think that my experiments are worth running for sure. But like humbly, yeah, no, I'm not going to solve all the problems. Like again, I totally think I can make a great argument for why we should try to do things the way I'm going to try to do them. But
no, I love that. Thank you. It was just so interesting to me, and I hadn't heard anything even remotely similarly phrased in that way. So I was just
I
interesting
think
to
a
hear you.
lot of VCs and technologists would say stuff like that.
Mhm.
I would politely not agree.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, hi Connie. I'm Savio. I'm a student at UC Merced actually in computer science and engineering. I'm also a mentee in the From Farms to Incubators menteeship program. And I really appreciate your insights into like VC in this field because you don't hear a lot about it. I mean, my only experience with VCs is from the show Silicon Valley. So, I mean, I see like what you're talking about, the moonshot and the like trying to get $1 million returns on every investment. And I see kind of how it's affected the VC industry as well. So I really appreciate your insight on that. And I wanted to ask you, how did your engineering degree, how would you say it's affected your path into the VC space? And how was your path into the VC space? Because considering you're playing with like a lot of money, like more money than I think I'll ever play with in investing, um, well, like you do, like how does it affect that? How was your journey into it? And how do you think it's returned you?
Yeah, great questions. And yeah, I'm pretty sure Silicon Valley is a documentary. So um yeah, I never meant to work in like finance. I'm from the New Jersey suburbs. Like everyone in the town I grew up in is like investment banking type people, and they don't seem very happy for it. And like that's just never been something that I'm attracted. Like my sisters both live in Manhattan. Like it's not something I ever wanted to be involved in. Um, but I see finance as a tool. In terms of the utility of my like engineering degree, um, gosh, my like first or second week of work, I was in a bunch of pitches, right? With the way that the Yield Lab started, it was five guys who were investors in a local venture capital fund, super successful guys, one CEO of Novus, VP is from which is like one of the largest animal feed supplement companies, billion-dollar revenue type company. VP is from Monsanto, John Deere, Merrill Ingelheim. So big corporations, again, like hugely successful, super smart people. And also not technical people. And so like it was really interesting because I'd sit in pitches where people would talk about, whatever the thing that was cool at the time, which was probably like something to do with like, oh, what was hot at the time is like people were really into trying to use satellite data, and this was in like 2016, but use satellite data for like real-time irrigation monitoring, which like at the time, you know, best case scenario, you were getting like one data point every 2 weeks. But like realistically, with like cloud coverage stuff, you were like getting one data point maybe every two, like more like every 4 to 6 weeks. And so you obviously can't really do anything meaningful with irrigation with like one data point at that cadence. And just like getting into some of the weeds on like lightly and understand like knowing the words that everyone was saying that like founders were pitching to be like, oh, that's but like and actually being able to ask intelligent questions and dig into whatever relevant academic papers were necessary to more deeply understand something was so useful. And like it was actually so useful to our firm because I was the only one who had that technical background. And it's unbelievable to me to this day that there are so many people who invest in technology without having any understanding of what the hell they're investing in. And like this is again where like I feel really lucky to have had this kind of general background where like I was very bad at pretty much everything CS, but like at least I got the fundamentals and I passed everything. And like I can ask smart questions now. Um, don't let me build anything, but like yeah, so I'd say it's been invaluable and we need more technical talent in VC. One thing that I've noticed though is also the kind of combination that like you need both technical understanding and phenomenal communication skills. And one of the most important things about communicating technical stuff is like making it simple. And this is why like I always start with like the jargon thing and I try to not like interlate, just do the big word explainer thing because that doesn't help anyone understand anything. And like I don't think it makes you look smarter personally. But like you'll see founders will do that actually. It's funny because you'll get pitched by people who just use big technical words. And then when you ask questions because you understand the technical words, they just use bigger words. And you're like, okay, well, if you're unable to explain to a third grader why your thing works and matters, then I don't know. But yeah, engineering is important for VC.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some good insight. I actually agree with you on a lot of jargon being thrown around now, and I think it's more valuable to simplify things for, let's say, the average consumer or someone who's looking to invest. I think it's a very good thing to have in your skill set is to simplify things.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you think about like one of the things I focus a lot on, and like this is part of what we wrote this inclusive innovation paper on, is like if you're trying to design technology for heavy industry in a world where you've got a variety of users who speak different languages and have like different levels of education and different priorities, frankly, like you need to learn to speak their language.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're not going to solve their problems. You're going to talk past each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sounds good. And the Silicon Valley show that I mentioned actually, it's just like a comedy show, but
No, I
they
know
go
it's funny.
deep.
It's honestly it's shockingly realistic though. I've seen it. It's
Oh, that's what you meant. Oh, like it's a
yeah, no,
documentary?
it's
Okay, yeah.
unfortunate. I know it's not a documentary, but but it could be.
Yeah, I mean honestly, yeah, I from what I've heard, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
I know there are other questions out there. Just unmute yourself.
No, Margot Souza. I'm involved with the Leadership Center at UC Merced. I think one of my concerns now is what's going to happen to our farm workers and with, deporting everybody and who's going to pick our crops. So I just wondered what you're thinking about that issue too, because I'm really worried about that. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, you should be on. I don't have a good solution. Yeah, I'm worried about the show. For more reasons than one. I would say you can follow my evolving thoughts in real time on this, as I occasionally probably put my foot in my mouth in my newsletter, which is called Ag is for People. Um, I think that we had an ag labor crisis before this. I think that if we truly have the level of deportation that the administration claims they're going to do, I mean, that's 50% of our ag workforce in a world where we don't have enough people to do the ag work today. Also, it's like individual humans. So it's interesting to be in a position where on some level, my investment thesis is incredibly validated, right? Like it's in a way creates a tailwind for me. And I hate that because I am actually not, again, like I'm investing in and I'll write a piece in the next couple of weeks here on like I am trying to invest in a future wherein farm workers are part of the next generation of tech companies and are actually benefit by it. And what I think will happen in investment world at least is we will see more dollars invested in ag automation as a consequence, not even forget about the efficacy of whatever, like maybe we have Trump 2.0 and like it's disorganized and not that much actually happens. But maybe we don't. But either way, we have enough kind of dialogue and stuff right now that like when I talk to the guys who run the big brands I won't name names, but like the big vegetable brands in California just this past week, like everyone's super stressed because most farmers do care about the people who work with them. And two, they're like, okay, yeah, we're investing in robots now. We've got to, because how the hell else are we going to do this? And so I can see a world where this is part of why I kind of started Farm Home when I did. I'd like to influence dollars to move towards solutions that do include farm workers, because otherwise, dollars are going to go towards solutions that won't work, by the way, that claim that we're going to completely 100% automate farms. And that's just like stupid on several levels. But I do think we'll see more dollars go towards stuff like that.
Thank you.
Hmm.
That's good.
Thank you. Timely discussion questions. There's a whole bunch of other folks and not in my window, but I feel like there's other people. So feel free to actually like put your question in the chat as well. I did put a link to Connie, your newsletter. Can you say the title one more time and how can people access this?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Yeah, it was in the chat. It's Ag is for People on Substack, or Agriculture is for People on Substack. Um, and yeah, you got my website there. I'm generally like a pretty open book. Like if you want to connect on anything further, I mean, maybe go through Amy so you can get my email, and I'm traveling a ton this month, so email me like 3 times and you're not being annoying, I'm just not responding. And yeah, I'm again, like I'm pretty, I don't like how closed-doored venture capital and tech can be, and like I will always try to make as much time as I can to make intros and all that jazz.
So I guess some final words before we wrap up here. Time goes by quickly. So can you give us a little bit of your crystal ball as to like the investment world in terms of ag tech as we kind of move into 2025? You see more investment coming in, and especially in the sector and area that you're in, or what are you seeing in your crystal ball?
Well, where we are right now is no one's investing in ag tech. Ag tech is at like a low. It's not great. We have a funny thing that's about to happen where a lot of the active ag tech venture capital funds are about to be fundraising themselves. So I'm not optimistic that 2025 is going to bring about much more smart dollars in ag tech. I do think though, to Margot's question and like my point before, like where we are going to see an increase in kind of reactive generalist tech
Mhm.
investing in pieces of ag tech that feel super pressured. I also think that some of the like it's been very interesting in the past like 2 weeks, right? That we've like all been scrubbing our grants for language that is amenable to the current administration's priorities. And for the climate change investment group in particular, pretty much every single thing within agri-food technology today is climate tech. It's all, at least reducing emissions, if not doing something else also. And, I live in Missouri. Like, I'm used to managing politics on multiple sides of the aisle. Agriculture, you have to be used to doing that. And so there, I think, continues to be tremendous opportunity for climate solutions in ag tech, but the reason people are going to buy that ag tech stuff is um is going to be because it makes their farm more efficient, right? So I think we're going to see more of kind of the climate impact investor crowd invest in the space, which is great.
Okay. We have time for one brief more question. I see it in the chat box. What can you tell us about the future of organic farms?
That's a great question. I feel like regenerative is kind of like the new version of organic right now. Like I know like California actually has like a state has defined regenerative and in the context of California, which is like not well, there are certifications and non-certifications, but basically it's like more soil health centered and more of like how can we make farming not depleting resources, but regenerating them. And that also in some definitions of regenerative starts to get into like the rural community and the people involved in the system, which is you might guess I have a preference for that type of definition. Um, Organic is still growing though. I mean, organic is higher margin. Organic is organic acreage is growing. I think, though, an important thing to point out is organic, regenerative, almost all of these sustainability, more diverse farm systems are inherently more labor intensive because if you don't spray chemicals, you're
Mm.
weeding by hand. And so I would say that actually in a world where we do deport 50% of our ag workforce, that's going to be a bigger problem for organic farms than conventional for sure. So
Mm.
the demand is there and there can be some growth, but I think it stays niche, honestly. I tend to focus more on like non-organic stuff. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, and what I'm hearing is depending on what happens, there could be a ripple effect on
yeah,
the organic as well as we wait
yeah.
and see what happens. I have found this discussion, Connie, very, very rich and exciting, and it's also some great questions out there also. So I was going to say that in summary, um, Connie's newsletter, and I really enjoy reading it, is in the chat box. You can choose to subscribe to it as well. And then if you want to connect with Connie, what's the best way again? You can reach me. Um,
Yeah, or I can drop my email in here too, but with the copy, yeah, you can
mhm.
connect.
And also, you regularly write for LinkedIn. Is that correct? Or maybe you
For
should
for
put
Forbes,
a
yeah,
link.
I used to. I don't really like Forbes because of the paywall. Don't. Oh, I guess this is recorded. Don't
Oh,
tell them I said
okay.
that. But sometimes I write for Forbes when I want to reach that audience. But I write most of my stuff in ag is like ag is for people is better, and
Okay.
sometimes I write for Ag Funder too. But again, if I write for any of those outlets, I'll also post it in my Substack.
Okay, sounds great. So, keep up with Connie then through the Substack newsletter, and then you'll keep us posted about maybe the soil health. What is it in
Yeah, in
September,
Merced.
right?
Yeah,
Especially for the folks out in Merced, some of the students out there. And so we want to thank Connie today and give her a round of applause. I'm forgetting how we give a round of applause on Zoom, but I'm giving you a round of applause.
thanks
Thank
all.
you.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.